What if the most terrifying secret in your town wasn't buried in the ground, but was sitting inside sit, just a block away, in the back seat of an old car? And what if the key to unlocking that nightmare wasn't a detective or a clue, but a simple act of family pettiness? This is not a fictional thriller. This is a true story, a chilling tapestry woven from addiction, violence, and a gruesome discovery that lay hidden for over a year, waiting for a moment of spite to bring it into the light. A story that begins with a missing woman and spirals into a cycle of darkness that would claim more than one soul. Stay with me, because the truth is often stranger and far more horrifying than anything we can imagine. In a small, forgettable American town, life moved slowly. Here, my childhood best friend, let's call her Sarah, had a grandfather. He was a hard man, deeply entangled with alcohol. His longtime girlfriend was trapped in the same struggle. Their lives were a series of hazy days and volatile nights. Then, one day, the girlfriend vanished. But in their world, disappearance wasn't unusual. She would often drift away for days, lost to her addictions. So when she didn't come home this time, her family, numbed by habit and hopelessness, didn't file a report. A week passed, then a month, then a year. The void she left was just another shadow in a life filled with them. Meanwhile, the grandfather grew older, sicker, more isolated. The mystery of his girlfriend's absence hung in the air of his cluttered home, an unasked question. And then he died. With his passing came the mundane business of inheritance. Who gets the house, the savings, the belongings? For Sarah, the promise was a car, not a fancy one, just an old sedan parked a block away from his house, a tangible piece of a complicated legacy. But family drama has a way of twisting even the simplest plans. Sarah's aunt swooped in. She claimed the car, asserting her own right to it. Sarah, feeling cheated and furious, made a decision born purely from bitterness. If I can't have it, neither can she. She called a towing company to have the car impounded. Since it was still in the grandfather's name, the aunt would be thrown into a bureaucratic labyrinth of paperwork and fees to retrieve it. It was a small, petty revenge, a final shot in a silent family war. Sarah had no idea that this single phone call was about to pull back the curtain on an unspeakable horror. The tow truck arrived, but fate, it seems, has a cruel sense of irony. One of the tow truck drivers was a friend of the aunt. He knew about the death, knew about the car, and on a personal whim, he picked up his phone. He gave her a heads up. "Your niece is having the car towed. If you want it, you better get down here now." The aunt rushed to the scene, confronting the tow truck driver. She claimed the vehicle. With a mix of victory and curiosity, she peered inside the old sedan. In the back seat, she saw them. 2 or 3 large plastic storage totes. Why were they there? What did the old man leave behind? Tools? Old clothes? Papers?
Driven by an impulse she'd never be able to explain, she didn't wait to get home. She opened the car door right there on the street and lifted the lid of one of the totes. Inside, she found stacks of vacuum-sealed bags. They were made of that thick, opaque plastic, the frosty kind, where you can see shapes but not details. The contents were a uniform dark, murky color. The bags were heavy, cold to the touch. Her mind, seeking logic, scrambled for an answer. Deer meat from a past hunting season? Rotten food he'd hoarded? The first prickling of unease danced up her spine.
She picked up a bag. She found the seal, and she opened it. The smell hit her first, a thick, putrid, overwhelmingly foul odor that spoke of deep decay, a smell that bypassed the nose and went straight to the primal part of the brain, screaming danger. She recoiled, gagging, her rotting meat theory seeming confirmed. But then she looked, really looked. She pushed past the frosty plastic, her eyes trying to make sense of the dark, textured mass inside. And she saw the fingers. It wasn't deer meat. It was a human hand. The world shrank to that bag, that tote, that back seat. The missing girlfriend, the year of silence, the grandfather's grim solitude. It all crashed together in a moment of devastating, stomach-churning clarity. The screams that followed weren't just hers. They were the echoes of a secret that could no longer be contained. The police arrived swiftly. The quiet street was suddenly bathed in spinning red and blue lights. The totes, all of them, were carefully removed. The car was sealed as a crime scene. The grisly truth was now in the hands of the authorities. The grandfather had murdered and dismembered his girlfriend and had kept the remains with him just a block away from his home for over a year. With the perpetrator already dead, the official case was closed. There was no trial, no dramatic verdict. The town was left with a ghost story that was all too real. The car was never returned to the family. Sarah's petty revenge had unearthed a monster, leaving everyone involved traumatized and empty-handed. The horror, however, had seeped into the soil of Sarah's life. The trauma of that proximity to evil, the chaos of her family, the inherited shadows of addiction, they began to pull her under. Years later, Sarah was lost. Methamphetamine had its hooks in her deep. One desperate night, she was with two other addicts, a couple as lost as she was. Sarah was behind the wheel. The need for the next high was a physical scream in their veins. They made a fateful, evil decision. They would rob someone. They pulled up to a man, offered him a ride. He got in the back seat. The boyfriend, riding in the back with him, immediately tried to rob him. But their victim was not defenseless. He pulled a gun. A flash, a bang, and the boyfriend was shot in the head. The man fled. Panic. Pure, drug-fueled animal panic. Sarah and the surviving girlfriend drove the dying man to the hospital parking lot, but instead of rushing him to the doors, to help, to salvation, their shattered minds saw only the police, the questions, the consequences. They opened the door, pushed his body onto the asphalt, and sped away into the night. They left him there. He was found, but it was too late. The investigation took months, but it was relentless. The pieces were put together. Sarah and the other woman were identified, arrested, and tried. My childhood friend was sentenced to prison. She served 5 to 7 long years, a consequence for a moment of monstrous cowardice born from a life that had been touched by monsters long before. She has been out for a few years now, carrying a weight few can understand. This is the story. A story that starts with one hidden act of violence and echoes into another. It's about how trauma can ripple through lives, how darkness can be both hidden in totes in a backseat and carried within a person's soul. It's a reminder that the most terrifying stories aren't about ghosts in attics, but about the real human capacity for horror and the long, long shadow it casts. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's waiting in the dark. It's what we discover in the plain light of day and the unrecognizable shapes our lives can take in its aftermath.